Okay, let's get on with today. Okay, we ended the last class. What I said was, on Friday, what I said was we have to ask the right question. Okay, unless you ask the right question, you could spend, as I said, a lifetime studying something and it could tell you nothing. So you've got to ask the right question. And the right question was, what I suggested, was a cultural perspective. And we did this at the end, which is, okay, the question we should ask is, how does advertising influence how we think about ourselves, about the world, about what is good and bad? How does advertising tell us about right and wrong? It's actually to turn it from a question about sales to a question about values, and a question about identities, and a question about ourselves. Right? How does advertising affect our values and our identities? And if it didn't, it would be, okay, if advertising didn't do that, if it didn't affect our values and identities, we would be unique in human history. And we would be unique because it would mean that our culture is not affecting us. So I made the argument that advertising is the culture. Advertising, messages, commercial speech is the culture. And for those messages, for that system not to influence us, as I said, would make us unique in human history. Because what advertising does is advertising talks to us about things that are important. And it does it through the medium of things. Okay, advertising is always doing two things. It's talking about what's its major reason? It has to sell stuff, right? So it's always talking about what it has to sell. It's always talking about things. But you may have noticed advertising actually talks about things through something else. It talks about things through other values, through other ideas. And it talks about things which are important to us. Family, community, sociability, sexuality, independence, you name it, whatever is important to us, advertising talks about it. It does both those things. The question we ask, or the way we look at advertising, has to be able to look at both those things together. In that sense, this is if I don't know, ask you on the first exam what advertising is, this might be a pretty good definition for what advertising is. It is a discourse, it is a story. That's what a discourse is a story. It is a discourse, a story through, so it's telling us about ourselves through, and it's also about objects. Okay, discourse through and about objects. That's going to be the kind of the central focus, or the main way in which we're going to think about things for the semester. Now, I understand that what does it mean? I'm going to take it actually in a very concrete way today to show how this operates, how it both talks about products and talks about us at the same time as it's doing it. And in that, impacts our fundamental values. What's the missing word? Right. A diamond is forever. Everyone knows that. Well, everyone who's been exposed to that idea knows it, which means everyone in this culture. Okay, a diamond is forever. Okay, this idea, it structures courtship, structures engagement, structures love, structures marriage, deals with interpersonal relationships at a deepest level. A diamond is forever. And the question we can ask is, it's not often you can actually ask it in the culture. I mean, this is a very deep idea, right? I gave you 3 words and you could instantly come up with that other word. Everyone knows it. A diamond is forever. It's one of the most influential ideas when it comes to interpersonal relationships. So the question we can ask is, okay, where did this idea come from? Well, we can answer that. We can actually answer that if we look at, how do we answer it? We answer it by looking at history. Because, believe it or not, diamonds didn't always mean forever. Diamonds didn't always mean love. Diamonds didn't always mean, will you please marry me? That actually is an invention within, that idea is an invention within about the last 100 years. Did not exist before that time. In fact, before we can actually separate out the history of diamonds, there's a pre and a post. Okay, we can look at it before 1870. Okay, before 1870, diamonds were a genuinely rare stone. Their value came from the fact that they were scarce. They were found occasionally in riverbeds, and their value came from the fact of their scarcity, like gold now. That changes in around 1870 when huge diamond mines, sorry, I forgot to do, wait, I forgot to fill in, I just presumed you all know this. Okay, huge diamond mines are discovered. They are discovered in South Africa. Okay, so where did this idea come from? So I'm going to blame the technology on this, but that's actually me just forgetting to do it. Okay, until the 1870s, diamonds, as I said, were a genuinely rare stone. In 1870, huge diamond mines are discovered in South Africa. And the history of diamonds is inseparable from the history of South Africa, starting in the 19th century, which means the history of diamonds is inseparable from the history of racism. It's inseparable from the history of Europeans and Africa. That's what diamonds are about. Huge diamond mines are discovered in South Africa. You could literally dig diamonds up by the handful, literally dig them out of the ground. They're no longer rare, no longer scarce. Fearful that the price of diamonds would come down, which they would do. If all those diamonds were released onto the market, the price of diamonds would come plummeting down. Fearful that the price of diamonds would come down, the owners of these mines formed themselves into a monopoly. They formed themselves into what's called a cartel. Different owners of these mines said, if we compete with each other, we are going to all be dead. So what we'll do is we will join together. We will become one partnership. We will become one cartel. And De Beers is the name of one of those mines. That's why it's called De Beers. It's the name of one of the mines where diamonds were found. That company, De Beers, you all have recognized it, until the start of the 20th century, it still held pretty much of a monopoly on diamonds. In the last decade or so, that monopoly has gone. And it's not so powerful anymore, but it's still diamonds and De Beers. Diamonds and De Beers go together. De Beers is the monopoly. De Beers is the cartel. That the agreement among owners of diamond mines that they would restrict the number of diamonds getting onto the world market, onto the market. You keep supply down, you can keep demand up, or you can keep price up. If you suddenly released all those things, all those diamonds, it's dead for everyone. Okay? That's why I call it, when I say it's a monopoly, it's an agreement among different competitors, agreement among different people that we will operate as one factor within the marketplace. Okay, in fact, they're actually, if you wanted to look at the De Beers family or the De Beers company, it's actually inseparable from the history of one white South African family. And that family is called the Oppenheimers, who owned De Beers and operated De Beers for many years. It is still largely a family business. And their goal, it was an audacious goal. This was the goal of De Beers and the Oppenheimers. Their goal was to control the global trade in diamonds. And they were spectacularly successful. spectacularly successful. Maybe the most successful kind of business campaign in the history of business. They maintained for the 20th century a tight control on. There's one film which I'll post online if people are interested, just for your own viewing. We're going to see clips of it. There's a film actually called The Diamond Empire. The Diamond Empire, and it's outlasted a lot of other empires. It's outlasted the Soviet Union, for example. Outlasted the British Empire, actually. The British haven't had an empire for quite a while. Might be the most powerful, least economic empire of the 20th century. However, okay, right now there is no tradition, no mass tradition of giving diamond rings upon engagement. They're still trying to maintain the value of diamonds based on their scarcity. By 1938, by 1938, there was a crisis in the diamond business. Between the two wars, between 1919 and 1938, the total sale of diamonds, measured in carats, declines by around 50%. And the price of diamonds declines then as well. By 1939, there are fewer diamonds being bought at lower prices than ever. Okay, what's yet? Based as an economic commodity. Based as an economic commodity, the price is dropping. If De Beers wants to make these things valuable, which you can dig out of the ground by the ton, right, they are not scarce. If there was one, right, there was one thing I could tell you, I could say that you only need to know one thing about diamonds. Actually, two things to know about diamonds. I'll tell you the other one. The first most important thing about diamonds: they are not a scarce stone. They are not scarce. There are lots of them. You can make them in factories now. They are discovered all around the world. They are not scarce. So when people pay 2 months' salary, $10,000 or whatever else, the price is not based on their economic value alone, based on supply and demand. It's based on something else. What De Beers needed to do was this was the problem De Beers had. The thing they had lots of, and the more they released onto the market, the lower the price would come. They had to make these things they had valuable based on something else. They had to make them something else. To make them have value beyond the economic. And in this, they were incredibly, sensationally successful, and in the process, changed the very definition of engagement and marriage. Changed the very definition, changed the very way that people in the West, men and women in the West, thought about their intimate marital relationships. That is spectacular. This is a clip from The Diamond Empire, that film that I mentioned, which I'll post. I'll give you a link online as if you want to watch it optionally. So this is from a film called The Diamond Empire, which actually De Beers tried to censor, tried to make sure they wouldn't get shown. And the filmmaker went through all kinds of, and the author went through all kinds of efforts to try and make sure it got shown.
In the spring of 1992, more than 100 wealthy benefactors from around the world were invited to the Hotel Pierre in New York City to a fundraiser for AIDS research. Elizabeth Taylor, the high priestess of the mystique of diamonds, had invited them personally to an auction of fine jewelry that raised more than $500,000. The evening itself was a glittering tribute to the allure of diamonds.
I'm wearing the diamonds because my sweetheart has given them to me, and it means love, and it means forever.
Diamonds? Aren't they a girl's best friend? Did something change?
Diamonds. They're a woman's best friends.
So champagne.
But what we think about diamonds is in fact a myth. At the center of that myth is an illusion that diamonds are valuable because they are rare. When writer Edward Epstein set out to investigate the diamond trade, he discovered that diamonds aren't rare at all.
Well, what I learned was that the diamond business wasn't a business of extracting, as I originally expected, something of enormous value, and then simply seeing how much of this object you could get out of the ground and selling it. That was what the business appeared to be when I started my venture. That their real business was restricting what came out of the ground, restricting what was discovered, restricting what got cut, restricting what actually found its way into the retail market, and at the same time, through movies, through advertising, through Hollywood, through the manipulation of perceptions, creating the idea that there was this enormous demand for these shiny little objects that they seemed to have an abundant supply. So I wound up on this voyage of discovery, starting off with the idea that there was this object of great value, and that it was just a question of how many could you get out. And I wound up discovering it was just the opposite.
This is the story of how that grand illusion was created, and the story of how one family gained control of the world's diamond trade, and for nearly a century has maintained its hold on an empire that defines the very idea of what diamonds really are.
This actually, you know, if you took the red pill before you came today, it's actually going to be really uncomfortable. Because this idea is really, really deep. And it's really, really deep for women more than men. And therefore, it's uncomfortable to actually ask the question of where did something so fundamental actually arise from. Yeah.
You said there were two most important things about that.
Oh, I'm going to come to the other one in a second, yeah. Okay, as Ed Epstein, right, he wrote the book, it's a really good book called The Rise and Fall of Diamonds. He says he started off, you know, was going to investigate the diamond industry and thought, oh, it'll be like other businesses. You try and make the most, you try and make as much as you can, try and make as many things as you can. He said exactly the opposite. It was about restricting flow, restricting supply onto the main market. Let's go to quote number one. This is from Epstein. He says, what they had to do, quote one, what was necessary was the creation of a mass mentality in which women would perceive diamonds not as precious stones that could be bought and sold according to economic conditions or fashion, but as an inseparable part of courtship and married life. That was the task. When you're faced with this crisis, that's what De Beers had to try and do. To this end, De Beers, what they do, you're going to change public attitudes. And they could, De Beers, because they had a monopoly, they could actually change public attitudes about diamonds as a whole. Okay, Coca-Cola and Pepsi can't do that because they're two different companies, each with a huge share of the cola market. They can't define what cola means because they have their own particular brands. Pepsi, well, De Beers doesn't. De Beers actually didn't even have to really mention De Beers. All it had to do was to transform how we thought about diamonds as a whole. And as they were the main monopoly supplier, well, that would benefit for them. They hired the New York ad firm of N.W. Ayers. And the campaign had two goals. Firstly, it was to persuade men, who were 90% of the buyers of diamonds at this time, to persuade men. Who buys diamonds now hasn't changed. It's not women who buy diamonds, right? It's men who buy diamonds. And by the way, there's an incredible amount of pressure that goes into that. I mean, people go into all kinds of debt to go. I mean, it really is one of the most, actually no, I don't want to make a judgment. It's a really strange debt to take on. It's a strange debt to take on at the start of marriage, or the start of a relationship. But they had to persuade men to buy bigger diamonds. They had to get men to believe the idea that diamonds were a gift of love, and of course, the bigger the diamond, the greater the love. So the more you spent, the bigger, the more you expressed. That's why even to today, all the focus when there's an engagement ring, how big was the ring, how big was the stone? Because somehow that's supposed to indicate how, we'll see but not everyone can spend the same amount of money. We'll see the brilliant solution that the diamond industry, the De Beers, came up with to deal with it. So they had to persuade men to buy bigger diamonds, to spend more money on diamonds. And they had to persuade women that diamonds were a necessity to romantic courtship, that engagement and marriage was impossible to think of without the gift of diamonds. Okay, this is simply a business proposition that De Beers had, or business problem that they had. How did NWAs go about doing this? Well, how do you change the meaning of something? That's the thing. Meaning, there's no inherent meaning in anything. Meaning, by its very definition, meaning is always made by someone. Meaning is always up for grabs. There is no such thing as natural meaning. Meaning always reflects someone's interest. Someone created that. That's why meaning, culture, and power have to go together. If you're looking at culture, you have to look at power. How do you change the meaning of diamonds? Well, firstly, they did it through movies, by exploiting the new medium of motion pictures. Remember, this is around 1939, just before American entry into the First World War, around 1939. Let's go to quote number 2. This is from an NWA's internal memorandum. Okay, it says, it's a very interesting, they say, so it's an internal advertising agency memorandum. They say, motion pictures seldom include scenes showing the selection of or purchase of an engagement ring to a girl. It will be our plan to contact scenario writers and directors and arrange for such scenes in suitable productions. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Hollywood, and we're going to talk to writers and directors, and we're going to bribe them to put in stories about diamonds upon engagement. And in this, again, they were very successful. Also, movie stars will be given diamonds for free to use as their symbol of indestructible love. So if you start to be connected with the world of glamour. This is the next clip from the Diamond Empire.
I was born 3 billion years ago of fire and light.
Cornering the world's supply of diamonds was a stunning achievement. No less extraordinary was the cartel's success in creating a demand for its huge stockpile of diamonds.
Who am I? The eternal gift of love between man and woman. I am a diamond. I am forever.
The De Beers campaign is probably one of the most successful campaigns. I mean, measured in terms of the growth in the market. In the 1930s, they were selling a rather insignificant amount of diamonds in America. By the early 80s, they were selling close to $2 billion worth.
De Beers first targeted American consumers through the movies.
And they opened a Hollywood office. And in the Hollywood office, they would give out diamonds to producers in return for them putting the diamonds in the film in a way that was considered very favorable. Now, what was considered favorable was very simple. Surprise. If a woman was brought in on this decision, she might have a lot of ideas of what she wanted. So what they wanted to do is create the idea that the man had to surprise the woman and present her with a diamond.
And now for the important question I wanted to ask you.
Well, it's about time. I'm dying with curiosity.
You know I'm madly in love with you. I want you to marry me, Lily. You're in love with me too, aren't you?
Well, if I'm not, then I'm afraid I don't know what love is.
Here's your engagement present, darling.
Oh, Jeffrey, it's beautiful.
Well, that's Milo.
Milo?
Yes, he's wondering what's taking us so long.
Wouldn't he be surprised if he knew?
I doubt if he'd be surprised at anything.
Not only are we talking about what is a familiar process today of planting products in films, when we've all heard of the product endorsements and that sort of thing, but we're talking about Hollywood in its golden age, where entire movies were created. They identified the biggest stars, actresses of that period, and they never appeared in public without their De Beers diamonds.
Claudette Colbert and Merle Oberon were given special scenes to show off their De Beers diamonds. Diamonds Are Dangerous was conveniently retitled Adventure in Diamonds. But De Beers aimed even higher than Hollywood.
The British royal family was another idea of what, in the American mind, represented the ultimate in how you should behave and how you should behave aristocratically and well. And of course, the British royal family was more than willing to go along because diamonds came from British colonies.
From this, the largest man-made hole in the world, over 100 million pounds worth of diamonds have been recovered. In the De Beers sorting room, 3 million pounds worth of rough diamonds were on view.
The royal family was lobbied heavily and successfully so that the English royalty, Queen Elizabeth, started wearing diamonds, and she basically left all of her other gems off. That's a tremendous coup for a public relations agent to get the royal family to essentially become sales agents.
Caskets made of Kimberley blue ground, embossed with coronets, contained a 6-carat stone for Princess Elizabeth and a 4.5-carat diamond for Princess Margaret.
You must travel back in time 1 billion years to witness its birth.
De Beers advertising set its diamonds in worlds of glamour and royalty. But its best-known slogan arose out of the fear that sales would be undercut if people began putting second-hand jewelry on the market.
It is rare.
So they had to create the idea that you should never sell a diamond, even though its value would only increase. And secondly, that people should store and hoard these diamonds. So the whole idea that a diamond is forever is really their desperate hope that people will hold diamonds forever.
It is love, and its only promise is forever.
There, right, De Beers' nightmare is people start selling their diamonds. And they don't have control then of what goes into the market. And if that happens, the price would come down. So you have to convince people they have to hang on to these diamonds. No matter how many divorces you've gone through, you still always have your diamond ring. You can't possibly think about selling it. That was one. So through the movies and then through news stories linking diamonds and love, this is straightforward public relations. News stories placed in magazines and newspapers that reinforce the link between diamonds and romance, giving diamonds to movie stars, and then whole marriages sometimes got defined by the relation, like how big the diamond was that was bought on the occasion of a particular kind of marriage, up to someone's marriage. And then thirdly, through regular campaigns, regular ad campaigns. In fact, just by 1941, okay, the campaign's only been going 3 years. By 1931, sales of diamonds in the US had already risen 55%. After the war, a new strategy is devised, because before then it was still largely presented to upper middle class and upper class people. But if you want to make, you got to make that idea. You got to make diamonds a mass. You got to make it a mass product. So in 1947, a first strategy is devised to push diamonds as a mass consumer item. It actually was a unique kind of advertising campaign. Its aim would not be to change attitudes tomorrow, would not be to increase sales tomorrow, but long term, generationally, in 10, 20, 15, 20, 30 years' time, you will see the effects of, or the continued effects of this campaign to change cultural attitudes towards diamonds. New strategies are introduced whereby there are lectures to high school students. There's continued to focus on celebrities. And in 1948, this is the second, I'm going to say, this is the second most important thing I would say, is a diamond is forever. Where did that idea come from? 1948. Someone at a copywriter at the NWA's advertising agency on Madison Avenue. I can tell you when and where this idea came from. Okay, normally you can't do that. Normally with cultural ideas, they're so deep, you know, they go into, you can't say, here is where it came from. I can tell you exactly where that idea came from. 1948, the offices of the NWA's advertising agency quickly became the company motto. I hope the guy, whoever, or the man or the woman who did it, I hope they were well paid for coming up with this. One of the catchiest and most powerful ad jingles, ad slogos ever. It has become the culture. By the end of the 1950s, NWA's was able to report, and I think this is true. This is what they said now. This is at the end of the 1950s. Campaign's been going now for around 20 years or so. They say, let's go to quote number 3. Since 1939, an entirely new generation of young people has grown to marriageable age. To this new generation, a diamond ring is considered a necessity for engagement to virtually everyone. The fact that you could, in an instant know what that missing word was, that is testament to its power and to its success. How was this done? Now you may think, oh, this was very deliberate. Okay, this is, I'm going to play you now a promotional tape that De Beers sends to its retailers. Okay, we're not supposed to see it. This is not for customers, not for the saps who are going to be spending 2 months' salary on this thing that's worthless. Okay, but to the people, to the retailers who are going to be selling this. Listen to the language.
Let's start with your bread and butter, the support behind the rites of passage, the diamond engagement ring, diamond anniversary band, and the 25th anniversary diamond. Our goal is to make diamonds a cultural imperative for all these important occasions in a woman's life. That's why we are continuing to support these segments, so that newer products like the diamond anniversary band and the 25th anniversary diamond will become as obligatory as the diamond engagement ring, bringing your customers back again and again. That's what we're here for, to respond to your requests and to help you sell more diamonds.
Our job, what we are going to do, this is their language, by the way, I'm not making this up, I'm not interpreting it. We are going to make it a cultural imperative. The same way we did with engagement, the same way we made a gift of diamonds upon engagement, that has become a cultural imperative. We're going to do that now to the 10th anniversary ring. We're going to do that to the 25th anniversary band. We're going to do it so that it will become, as they say, as obligatory as a diamond engagement ring. All constructed, all made up. As culture always is. As culture always is. It's always made up by someone. Let's listen to it again.
Our goal is to make diamonds a cultural imperative for all these important occasions in a woman's life. That's why we are continuing to support these segments, so that newer products like the diamond anniversary band and the 25th anniversary diamond will become as obligatory as the diamond engagement ring, bringing your customers back again and again.
Again, the language is interesting. Okay. A cultural imperative in all parts of a woman's life. Okay, the target, men are doing the buying, But the target, actually, the major target is women, who you have to get to believe this. And for them to believe that somehow the engagement is incomplete without the gift of diamonds within that. And the bigger the diamond, the more someone loves you. Okay, it's a brilliant strategy. How is it done? Well, first of all, there's a number of strategies. We'll go through them. Strategy number one, you link diamonds with engagement and love. That's the core of it, which they refer to. You know, we've made this obligatory already. Okay, it's done through ads. So here are some ads.
Celebrations in all of love's languages. Only a diamond says forever.
Diamond engagement ring. How else could 2 months' salary last forever?
You must travel back in time 1 billion years to witness its birth. You will search in vain for a more enduring or brilliant creation. You can comb the world and never find one the same. It is rare. It is precious. It is love. And its only promise is forever.
It is rare. Nope. When they say you have to go back 1 billion years to understand, no, you have to go back to 1939 to understand it. And if you want to understand that in particular, you have to go to around 1947 when someone, you have to go back very far in history to understand this. You've seen, I'll go through these quickly. There are all these, there's ads. I mean, this is how it's done. It's done through hundreds, thousands of ads. That's how you intervene within the culture. Okay, I'm just going to go through these quickly. I'm not going to analyze them in particular, but that's the same idea, right? That's a diamond is forever. Love, romantic love. Has some very wet feet. Okay, diamonds are old. Yeah, that's. Okay, I'm going through these quickly because this is just the same idea. On the one hand, diamonds connected to love. At the same time, somehow the diamonds are really, connected to history and old and nature, etc. It could be, they could come anywhere. Well, actually, we'll see India actually has a very particular relationship to diamonds now, because that's where about 75% of the diamonds that make their way onto the market are cut. Not where they're discovered, or where they're cut. Let me just go through this. This is... Actually, and they realize now, actually, for men, you've got to train them to buy this. You've got to train them to figure out the right diamond. Women don't need training camp. They've been trained well enough. They're experts at this. But men, decide to buy a diamond. Okay, how are you going to do it? Well, you need some help. Now, this is actually one of the most brilliant strategies. Whoever came up with this was, I hope they got a big raise. Because the question is, the bigger the diamond, the greater the love. But you're going to sell lots of them. So if some people can only afford, you know, a $2,000 diamond, and other people can only afford, other people can afford, not only, other people can afford a $100,000 diamond, then isn't the 100,000 person who has 100,000, isn't their love much greater than someone who only spends 1,000 or 2,000 because that's all they have? And if you get that image, then why would the person who's going to spend 2,000 spend even 2,000 if you can't compare to, right? So you can't make it an absolute. You can't show your love just through an absolute number. It has to be a relative number. And what is that relative number?
When you get engaged, you want to find the right words.
What do you say we go off when we get married? We could go to Niagara Falls, yeah.
You also want to find the right diamond.
I think we'd make a successful merger.
Well, let's go off to the ranch and get hitched.
But how much do you spend on a diamond for the woman you love?
Forget it.
A good guideline is 2 months' salary.
Will you marry me?
Yes.
Yes.
Ask the Jewelers of America about the 2-month salary guideline. A diamond is forever.
You always liked the falls, didn't you?
The 2-month salary guideline. Brilliant. You're not saying you have to spend $10,000, you have to spend $20,000. It's relative. Actually, I love that. Ask your jeweler how much you should spend on this. Ask her how much you should, because they're the experts on, you know, on how much love is really worth. Absolutely brilliant. 2 months salary? You know how much that is? I actually calculated once. It's actually in around $4,000 on average. To buy these things that they have literally thousands and thousands of. And they release selectively onto the world market. I mean, that's actually what that was what the Beers had to do. So when I think of the history of diamonds, okay, when I think about diamonds, I have a very particular, because you know, there is the advertising, but for the advertising to work, there is another history that has to be made invisible. There's another history, and that history is the history of South Africa. That history is the history of racism. That history is the history of apartheid. That history is the history of slavery. That history is the history of white supremacy. When I see diamonds, that's what I see. Because that is what all the advertising has to do, is it has to make sure you don't see the real history. The advertising can only work if you don't see the real history. It can only work if, in fact, diamonds mean nothing before the advertising is put on. And once you know about the history of diamonds, once you start looking at it, I mean, that's what I'm asking you to do with everything. We're going to do this a lot, actually, not just with diamonds. We're going to do it with the world we live in. There is a particular kind of message, particular kind of way in which the world of products is being communicated about through advertising. And then there is the reality. And we've got to understand both of those. What the Beers used to do, because diamonds aren't scarce, right? Diamonds aren't scarce, no longer just found in South Africa. They're found in Australia, they're found in Russia, they're found all over the world. So what's the Beers has a real problem, had a real problem. They're so common. So what the Beers had to do was, every time a diamond mine was discovered, they either had to buy it to make sure the diamonds kept off the world market, or they had to destroy it. They sent thugs along and, you know, things got blown up. That was the way you maintained the monopoly of something that is not scarce. They're like the mafia. Many people, some people actually work for them, actually talked about them as the mafia. Okay, that's the hit. You got to know about the. Okay, that's taking the red pill. Said if you want to take the blue, if you took the blue pill, then you just pay attention to the advertising. That's the fantasy. That's the matrix. So you don't have to think about. But if you actually want to understand the world, not at the level of fantasy and not just a level, then you've got to actually do hard work of excavating the history of the products that surround us. And when you do it with diamonds, it's a very, very ugly history. It's a really ugly history. So I say whenever I see a diamond, you know, I mean, they can actually come from all over the place now. But when I see a diamond, for me, it doesn't actually mean love and engagement. It means racism, exploitation, violence, coded in this fantasy of what the advertising is about. Okay, so that's strategy number one. Because again, what they said was, but if you're De Beers, why limit yourself just to engagement? People get engaged. I was going to say just once a lifetime, but we know that's not true now. They get engaged perhaps 2 or 3 times. But that's limiting your market. Well, strategy number 2 then was, let's expand to the 10th year anniversary. If people are together for 10 years, we're going to make this, as the promotional tape said, we are going to make this as obligatory as the diamond engagement ring. We're going to make it a cultural imperative.
Oh, 5 more minutes. It's our anniversary. Let's call in sick.
Can't.
Oh, 10 years deserves something.
True.
Haven't I made you coffee for 10 years?
Haven't I had to drink it? Now, come on.
Why?
Show your friends this. Happy anniversary.
Oh, it's beautiful.
The Diamond Anniversary Band. This year. Tell her you'd marry her all over again.
Okay, I'll show them. Tomorrow.
Yeah, but people only have one 10th anniversary, so let's expand to 25 years as well.
25 years together. They've just flown by. 25 years of kids, jobs, moving. I didn't just want to bring her back to her favorite place. I wanted to give her something she's only dreamt of.
The 25th Anniversary Diamond Necklace.
Actually, the comedian Dimitri Martin had a very interesting thing on this. This is Dimitri Martin. He has it about right. Has it about right. But that's still limiting the market, right? I mean, you can have, you've got the engagement ring, you've got the 10-year, you've got the 25-year, but you've got to keep expanding the market. Well, so what if, there's a whole, we're only actually trying to sell, we're actually just trying to make this meaningful to women. What if we could get men to buy, men also to be the recipients of diamonds? That's strategy number 4. Actually, and this was, I don't think they could have foreseen how much diamonds would expand into the world of sports, and people with NFL players and NBA players with huge diamond ring, diamond studs in their ear, etc. Okay, this is the man's diamond. Also, let's say another strategy. Why just men buying for women, or or women buying for men? Why not women buying for themselves? This is strategy number 5. You must probably seen these in the last few years. It's the right hand of power. Your left hand says we, your right hand says me. Your left hand loves candlelight, your right hand loves the spotlight. Your left hand rocks the cradle, your right hand rules the world. Women of the world, raise your right hand. Buy it for yourself. You feel so good about yourself, so powerful. Why let a man, buy it for yourself? Now you do have to be careful on this. I mean, because the meaning of diamonds means something, and you can't just keep expanding it. Otherwise, it means nothing. So it's one of these tricky things where you've got to kind of, in one sense, limit it, because if you make it mean too much for everyone, it means nothing for anyone. So this is a really careful trick. What are the results of the marketing campaign? Well, global annual sales. In 1939, global annual sales were $23 million. By 2007, global sales was $70 billion. I would say that's a pretty successful campaign. Pretty successful campaign. Okay, what is the impact of this? That's the material impact of this. Culturally, there's an even greater impact. Culturally, the overall impact has been on the culture, has been the creation of a public attitude whereby romantic relationships between men and women. Actually, I haven't really looked into this, but I presume that since gay marriage was made legal in a lot of places, that De Beers must have a strategy for that as well. They must be advertising in gay magazines as well. Although actually, De Beers would have to be careful, because the meaning of love in the culture is heterosexual love, and you can't suddenly just be meaning can't just be meaning homosexual love as well. Otherwise, it destroys the mystique of. So actually, I'm not. It'd be interesting. I haven't really looked into this as to what De Beers campaign, what De Beers strategy has been with the gay market. There must be, it's another huge market. Are they just going to leave it, or how do they appeal to that market? It's not through mainstream ads, but it may be in very selected magazines or very selected outlets. The overall impact has been on the culture, where diamonds are now central to thinking about the rituals of romantic courtship. I mean, they're in the culture. I mean, diamonds by themselves just have meaning now in and of themselves. Other people can use diamonds, in their own meaning construction. This is Victoria's Secret, the diamond-studded miracle bra. What about this from Levi's? In addition, the wedding tradition in countries all over the world has been transformed. It's not just a Western phenomenon. It's not just an American or a European phenomenon. All over the world. For example, in Japan, in 1967, there was no tradition of diamond rings in Japanese culture. A very traditional, actually pretty closed culture. In 1967, De Beers started their campaign in Japan. By 1981, that's only 13 years later, 60% of Japanese brides wore diamonds. Okay, that is, I just want you to think about what in 13 years, a 1,500-year-old tradition has been radically revised, has radically changed. That's cultural power. Again, now remember, it's not as though I'm saying culture should remain still. right? Culture is always up for grabs. If there's a 1,500-year-old tradition around marriage in Japan, it took a lot of effort to maintain that in place. A lot of effort, a lot of ritual to maintain that. And then you have something else coming in that is now countering that and starts to change it. That's the way in which culture works. Okay, by the start of the 21st century, the total control of the cartel, of the Beers cartel, was over. There's just too many places. There's too many places where diamonds can be produced. They can't keep it all under control. They're not scarce. You can find them anywhere. You can find them on riverbeds. They're on, as I said, they're mines all over the world. In Australia, in Asia, in Russia, in other places in Africa, in Botswana, in Zaire. They're just, right? They are, if they're not scarce, and by the start of the 21st century, you can't just, it's impossible to maintain anymore. There's too many people, yeah.
What is the relationship between De Beers and conflict diamonds?
Yeah, we're going to get to that right now. Actually, let me just do this. De Beers also are not like a regular commodity. Okay, a regular commodity, actually, for example, there's no futures market in diamonds. A futures market is where you kind of try and predict what is going to be produced when, and you kind of try and lock in a price. It's a financial instrument. De Beers has literally, I'm not kidding, literally billions of dollars worth of diamonds saved away. Therefore, you can't actually think about it as a commodity in that way, because they have control of what gets produced and what gets out on the marketplace. Okay, there are $4 billion worth of diamonds stored away. So they no longer have total control. There are other producers, especially in Eastern Europe, that are now competing for that. But they're now, the producers of Eastern Europe and all these other producers must be, they're saying to De Beers, thank you. You've created this idea that these things that we can produce by the ton, you've created the idea that they're valuable. And to the extent that they have any value whatsoever, it's because you've made them valuable. They also starting to lose the control of the story of diamonds. More and more consumers are being exposed to other information about the diamond business and about where diamonds come from. Someone just mentioned conflict diamonds. That is, people are starting to ask, where do these diamonds come from? What are the conditions within which diamonds are found? And that meaning, that's an inherent meaning of products, by the way. It's inherent. If I know where this product comes from, like if I know where these glasses come from, if I know, for example, that they were made by slave labor somewhere, then these are no longer just glasses. It doesn't matter what the advertising goes into them. For me, that slavery is now part of the meaning of this product. That's the way products work. Products are always carriers of the process of production, the process that produced them. And so what you have to do is you have to make sure, what advertisers have to do is make sure that you don't know about that. And that now is starting to get more, and that's starting to actually come more and more to the surface. Especially by their role the diamonds have played in some civil wars, especially in Africa and Sierra Leone. This is, I said, the term for it is conflict diamonds. They arise out of particular conflicts. Again, diamonds have been made valuable because of De Beers' work, and therefore whoever now can produce diamonds and get them into the supply will be able to make money. It's a source of money. And now there are civil wars being fought around the control of diamonds because they are now, there is actually a value to them. I'm going to play you a clip now, and I should warn you, some of it is pretty disturbing viewing, so you may want to look away when you see some particular scenes coming.
From 1991 to 1999, Sierra Leone was in a state of civil war. During that time, 50% of the 4.5 million people of Sierra Leone were forced out of their homes. And thousands of people have been killed. Millions more have experienced atrocities you do not want to even think about.
The people of Sierra Leone insisted that they wanted a democratic government. They no longer wanted the military power. The military resisted.
Well, there are fights for power going on in Africa, and the opposition movements always call themselves revolutionary forces in one way or another.
The IUF is not a revolutionary movement. The IUF seeks political power. And above all, we'll fight till the last man.
What's the war about? The rebels want to force themselves into power.
Rebel leaders want to buy weapons. In order to buy weapons, they need money. In order to get money, they need diamonds.
Trading diamonds has allowed rebel forces to buy fuel, to buy weapons, to buy friends.
So instead of fighting for democracy, many of these leaders are actually fighting over diamonds.
The rebels are angry at civilians for voting in a civilian government.
Soldiers would catch the people and say, oh, you voted, look at the finger, and if they see that indelible link on the finger, they chop off your finger.
Chop, 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 knife, pull up.
And this is how this business of amputation started.
In Sierra Leone, it's quite clear that the tactics of the RUF were to target civilian population in order to spread terror.
It was like we experiencing hell on earth. The rebels started attacking innocent people.
People were hacked to death, houses set on fire, anybody who tried to get out of the house gunned down, people lined up at random and shot.
This is a war about diamonds.
The bulk of them were young boys between the ages of 8 and 16. Some were carrying AK-47, some were carrying Russian assault rifles and rocket-propelled grenade launchers. I had a loud blast. One rebel fired a rocket-propelled grenade in one of the flats around. I noticed the scattered remains of some 8 people. I saw 2 children whose heads were severed from the rest of their body, and a good number of people with their remains scattered all over. The world was upside down for us in Sierra Leone at that time.
This is a war about diamonds, a war about natural resources.
In chaos, there are people who can take advantage of the lack of government, of the lack of legal controls. There are utterly shameless individuals and organizations out there who will buy conflict diamonds even though they know that those diamonds are helping to sustain a war, even a war as brutal as the one in Sierra Leone.
The De Beers Company have been caught up in a big controversy. They claim not to be buying diamonds and gems from conflict zones like Sierra Leone. They have developed codes of conduct and other ethical standards because they've been criticized severely by NGO groups that have monitored their practices.
At some point in the chain, those diamonds do get down to consumers who, when they buy themselves an engagement ring, want to know that that jewel has not blighted somebody else's life.
I would appeal to you to find out where the diamond you're buying is coming from.
This is from someone who used to work for De Beers. He was actually a detective who worked for De Beers, and he had to find out where these other mines were when he went to break them down. Just listen to what he says. This is from the film The Diamond Empire.
Zaire is rich in resources, but its people are desperate. While the few grow wealthy, the rest are left to scratch for whatever they can find. The chance to get rich seems worth any risk, even being buried alive. This is a fight over diamonds.
I have followed the diamond from the swamps of Africa to the window shops of Europe. I hate diamonds. I hate diamonds. If people know what I know about diamonds, if they have seen the suffering, the murder, the torture, the bribery, the corruption, that is invested to bring a diamond to the window shop in Europe, many honest, decent women would never look at a diamond.
If you only knew. Okay, we'll finish off next class.